Alien statue. Here is something you don't want to run into while diving in the ocean. Imagine yourself floating gently through the murky depths on your first diving mission and coming across an alien stuck at the bottom of the water like some kind of horrifying fossil. Well, off the coast of Russia, there is a steampunk xenomorph statue and nobody quite knows where it came from. No artist ever came forward to claim it, and to this day, it is a complete mystery. The alien, or xenomorph as they are known as in the popular franchise, is built in the steampunk fashion with gears and bolts and other metal objects, all of which have taken on a particularly nasty rust from being underwater for so long. Of course, this is not the only steampunk memorabilia around, as there is everything from the infamous Predator made from nuts and bolts to massive Godzillas made from the same. The only difference here is somebody decided to dump their creation into the ocean for unsuspecting divers to stumble upon in dismay. But you know what they say, in the ocean, no one can hear you scream. Human hand. Here is a freaky one for you. This was not something found in the ocean exactly, but more of something found inside of a shark's belly, and obviously sharks live in the ocean. The terrifying object found inside of a shark in 2019 was a severed human hand, complete with a wedding ring. The shark had been killed because it had already been deemed a threat. In the autopsy, they found that inside of the massive 10-foot, 3-meter tiger shark was a man's hand. This immediately raised an alarm because in the same area of Saint-Gilles, a 44-year-old Scottish tourist had been reported missing after going for a swim by himself. According to Metro News, the unnamed man and his wife had been spending a week on vacation on the island of Reunion, and after the man failed to return from his swim, his wife had sent for help. However, even after divers searched the sea, there was absolutely no sign of the man, other than the hand pulled from the shark. Definitely, it was a shocking autopsy. The last thing I would want on a nice relaxing vacation is to have an unpleasant encounter with a tiger shark. And now for number 8, but first, what is the thing that scares you the most about the sea? Let me know in the comments below and be sure to subscribe if you are new here. Anaconda. This one did not happen in the sea, but it did happen in the Formosa River in Brazil, which is basically the Amazonian Sea. In any case, when Bartolomeo Bove and his diving partner strapped on their gear and went for a dive in the river with their equipment, Bartolomeo was quick to run into a giant green anaconda, 23 feet, 7 meters in length, and weighing almost 200 pounds, which is 91 kilograms, simply lounging in the water like you or I would lounge in the tub. Rather than run away screaming like I definitely would have, Bartolomeo decided to shove his underwater camera in the giant snake's face. This kind of discovery would have terrified anyone, but it did not faze the diver at all. And it didn't seem to faze the anaconda either, who slithered off through the water like a massive eel completely at ease. The snake gave the camera a quick lick, apparently a little curious, and then went about its business, which shows that these animals are not the aggressive and dangerous things everyone has believed them to be. I don't know how the cameraman could have stayed so calm, because I am terrified right now just thinking about being underwater with a giant snake. Have you ever found a scary animal while you were swimming? Blackbeards Vessel. Blackbeard was arguably the most infamous pirate in the history of pirates, and for a long time, Blackbeard's famous ship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, was lost beneath the waves, but it was found in 1996. I can't imagine a more terrifying shipwreck to discover on the bottom of the ocean. The Queen Anne's Revenge began her life as a slaving vessel for the French, before Blackbeard got a hold of it and terrorized the Caribbean. The ship was equipped with up to 40 guns, a whole team of bloodthirsty pirates, and a multitude of other weapons. This boat will continue to be the most fear-inspiring vessel for the rest of history. The wreck was found in 1996 in Palm Bay, Florida, and in 1998, the state made an agreement that gave Intersil Inc. rights to make copyrighted photos and videos of it. Florida and North Carolina began excavating the wreck, and in 2011, North Carolina state authorities confirmed that the shipwreck was undoubtedly the Queen Anne's Revenge. In the wreck, they found apothecary weights stamped with little fleur-de-lis-royal French symbols, a small amount of gold, many weapons, and a bell engraved with the date 1705. What a great treasure. In 2015, the state of North Carolina passed a law where all images related to the Queen Anne's Revenge excavation were instantly property of the state and public records without copyright protection. Interestingly enough, Blackbeard died on a different ship on November 22, 1718, and was killed in action. Blackbeard's reign of terror was finally over as he was filled with 5 gunshots and impaled at least 20 times by both swords and knives. What a miserable end to a miserable person, and an interesting legacy left at the bottom of the ocean for hundreds of years. World War II remains. This is a truly grisly sight to behold. After the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor during World War II, America targeted a Japanese military base at Chuuk Lagoon in Micronesia. The attack was carried out by 500 aircrafts and additional submarines, and even though the Japanese took most of their larger ships from the area beforehand, the USA managed to sink 47 boats, 270 aircraft, and 1,700 Japanese servicemen. Today, the terrifying remnants of that battle can be found rotting away at the bottom of the lagoon. In fact, this is the world's largest ship graveyard. Boats can be seen riddled with torpedo holes, while other paraphernalia is scattered across the lagoon's floor. A dive below the surface of the water will yield terrifying images of gas masks, unopened beer bottles, and even rotting shoes. This horrible underwater museum is a brutal reminder of our not-so-distant past. The only good thing about all of this twisted metal at the bottom of the sea is that it has attracted lots of great marine life. There are now turtles, sharks, and manta rays that continuously visit the rusted and deteriorated ships. However, 3 of the sunken tankers are estimated to contain about 32,000 tons of oil. It is only a matter of time until all of that oil spills out and causes even more damage. Neptune Memorial Reef. I have mixed feelings about Neptune Memorial Reef. Just 3 miles, 5 kilometers off the coast of Miami Beach and roughly 40 feet, 12 meters beneath the waves, Neptune Memorial Reef is both terrifying and shockingly beautiful. This is a graveyard. That's right, a literal underwater graveyard. The entire memorial was inspired by the lost city of Atlantis. It has sunken columns, lion statues, roadways, and it looks very much like a lost city. This is a place full of marine life, interesting imagery, and the graves of the deceased. If you want to visit it, you have to go to the authorized shops in Miami and ask for a tour. They are going to accept divers and snorkelers that want to visit this place. Even if you are a novice, a professional diver, or if you are looking to get certified, they can bring you all the information about the plans they have. While Neptune Memorial Reef can certainly appear terrifying, it is still a very popular scuba site and snorkeling site. It is also home to many graves. You are able to purchase a special headstone which incorporates a person's ashes into a cement mold of something marine themed. And so, if you were diving and came upon this underwater graveyard, I bet you would think it was terrifying with all the headstones and themed graves. The first thing that comes to mind are underwater zombies, even if there are no actual bodies. Say what you will, but it is a ghoulish thing to see a sunken graveyard. Serene, beautiful, and oddly unnerving. Christ of the Abyss. Off the coast of Italy is arguably the most religious underwater monument ever placed into the ocean. It is also a terrible thing to find when diving in that area, as it looks more like a menacing ocean god beckoning you to Davy Jones' locker than the King of Heaven. This bronze statue was made by Guido Galletti. In August 1954, it was placed upon the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea as an honor to Dario Gonzatti, the first Italian to use scuba diving gear. Placed 56 feet, 17 meters under the waves, where it stays to this day. This divine statue may have begun life looking majestic and powerful, but years of sitting at the bottom of the sea has turned it into a terrifying piece that looks nothing like Jesus Christ anymore. It looks like a bronze Poseidon welcoming you to a watery grave. The statue is burdened by some kind of marine growth that has made the face of Jesus appear mutated and covered in some kind of biological slime. Basking Shark. Definitely one of the most terrifying things found in the sea is basking shark. But not just the basking shark, I'm talking about the basking shark with its mouth wide open. This is the second largest fish in the world, and it is a filter feeder. When the basking shark decides to eat, it opens its massive mouth and basically inhales whatever tiny little morsels of plankton gets in the way. But its open mouth looks more like a cave than anything else. Staring into the basking shark's gaping jaw is like staring into the gates of hell. Basking sharks reach lengths of 6 feet, 2 meters when babies, and commonly up to 40 feet, 12 meters at adulthood. They usually live in the equatorial zone, being commonly solitary creatures, but sometimes can form large groups of more than 100 individuals. These creatures live for about 50 years, and the females have a gestation period of at least 3 years. The basking shark is much more terrifying than a great white, an octopus, or a squid. But what makes it even more terrifying is that the basking shark spends most of its time very close to the surface of the water, swimming with its ridiculously large mouth completely open so that it can suck in food. This is undoubtedly one of the most terrifying things you could happen upon while swimming in the ocean. Have you ever swam with sharks? How was that experience? Let me know in the comments below. Sunken crosses of Malpeque. Here is something you don't see every day, an underwater graveyard commemorating a group of martyred missionaries from the 16th century. Yes, this is the second graveyard on the list, but honestly, is anything more terrifying to discover under the sea, other than perhaps a 40-foot shark or a real-life kraken, than weathered crosses scattered over the seabed? The location is in La Palma, Spain. The exact distance is 65 feet, 20 meters underneath the ocean. The story is more than 400 years old, from 1570 to be precise. At that time, the Canary Islands had been under the control of the Spanish. The islands were also extremely vulnerable to pirates, and so when a Portuguese missionary by the name of Ignacio de Acevedo and his group of 39 Jesuit companions were in the area, their vessel was bombarded by French pirates, led by Jacques de Soris, who wanted the ship and all the cargo. Of course, he didn't want the 40 men aboard the ship, so he decided to torture them and threw them into the sea, while watching how they slowly drowned and sunk to the bottom of the sea. Then, hundreds of years later in 1742, the men were declared martyrs. Still, it was not until the year 2000 that 40 crosses were dropped into the sea at the location as a memorial to the murdered missionaries. This is such a compelling story that it continues through the ages. In 2014, a big stone cross was erected at a nearby lighthouse with all of their names inscribed onto it. And while the crosses are in no way malicious, it is still a terrifying thing to stumble upon at the bottom of the sea. Man in a boat. This has got to be one of the most terrifying discoveries in recent years. It all started in 2013 when a tugboat was toppled by a swell off the coast of Nigeria and sunk. While 11 people died on that tugboat, one man named Okin managed to survive inside of a small 4-foot, 1.2 meter pocket of air. He survived there for 3 full days by drinking small sips of Coca-Cola. In a report from USA Today, it is detailed that a team of South African divers on their way to investigate the capsized tugboat were absolutely shocked to find the man sitting nonchalantly in an air bubble 30 meters beneath the surface of the Atlantic Ocean. This is an incredible and terrifying story. The divers were able to rescue Okin by putting him in a harness, giving him an oxygen mask, and then swiftly taking him into a decompression chamber. The man was then held inside of the decompression chamber for 60 hours so that his body pressure was able to return to normal. At the end of the day, the man was saved. This incredible event will undoubtedly be with him forever. Liger. It might sound like something out of a fantasy movie, but ligers are real. A cross between a male lion and a female tiger, the liger is the result of man-made breeding, but because lions are from Africa and tigers are from Asia, the liger is not something usually found in nature. Sadly, they seem to mostly have been created as a way to entertain people at zoos. With most ligers coming in much larger than any lion or tiger, they are believed to suffer from a form of gigantism, which means they do not stop growing. This means they often have bone, muscle, and joint problems. There are also often genetic mutations when the lion and tiger breed together. One can't deny they look unique though. With equal parts lion and tiger, they are usually tawny or light in color with the stripes of a tiger. Most usually weigh in at almost 1,000 pounds and can eat over 50 pounds of raw meat at every meal. With geography an obstacle and crossbreeding resulting in offspring with various medical problems, it might be better to just imagine a world with ligers in it than to see these animals suffer for entertainment purposes. Asiatic Lions. Lions are one of the most majestic animals in the world, but that doesn't mean they are not at risk. The Asiatic lion is one such species whose numbers are dwindling. With only several hundred of the Asiatic lions still surviving, the Asiatic lion, which is smaller than other lions, are only found in a very small area of the world. Although they were once found from Turkey across Asia to eastern India, due to being hunted to near extinction, they are now only found in the Gir Forest in India, an area smaller than Greater London. About 10% smaller than their African cousins, Asiatic lions have a larger tuft of fur on their tails and have a distinctive fold on their bellies. The males of the species tend to live away from the females unless they are ready to mate or have a big kill to share. Males also have a shorter, darker mane than African lions. Almost extinct, they now live in areas that protect them from poaching in 5 sanctuaries of forest. Poaching is not the only problem these lions must face. Forest fires, other natural disasters, and the population encroaching on their natural habitat all put them at risk. They need grasslands, acacia patches, and orchards as refuge, but as development continues to seep its way into these natural areas, humans and lions continue to interact, putting these noble creatures in danger of once again falling victim to possible extinction. Barbary lion. Barbary, or Atlas lions, were once known to roam through the deserts of northern Africa, often found from Morocco to Egypt. They were the largest of the lion subspecies, admired for their dark manes, and known to have been once kept by royal families of Morocco and other northern Africa nations. You might know these lions best as ones that battled gladiators in ancient Roman Colosseum, as well as being displayed at many European zoos. Sadly, these events are what led to their decline. With so many being killed for sport, others pushed into smaller territories, and European hunters arriving to hunt those that remained. By the 1920s, Western scientists believed they were completely extinct, but as late as the mid-1960s, research shows that there could have been a small pocket of Barbary lions still alive in Algeria and Morocco. Various nature conservancy programs researched and found accounts of sightings well after 1922 from remote Algerian communities who swear they saw these lions in the wild. It would be nice to think that despite being hunted or used for sport, that the species could have survived in the wild long after they were thought to have died out. This largest of the lion subspecies was known for their long dark-haired manes that extended over their shoulders and down to their bellies. They were believed to have adapted these colors and their large size due to environmental temperatures in the Atlas Mountains, which was much lower than the other regions in Africa, and their nutrition. With some zoos boasting that they still have true Barbary lions in their hands, including one Czech zoo who had 2 Barbary lion cubs born in 2019, one can hope these majestic creatures still exist. And even though seeing them in captivity isn't ideal, it may be better than the alternative of them going completely extinct. Transval Lion. One of the most unique species of lions are the Transval lion. Named for the Transval region of Africa where they were found, this lion looks different than others on first sight. Born with a condition known as leucism, these lions have a lighter coloring in their coats, with their cubs born completely white. They do still retain coloring on their nose and feet pads, and some are known to have blue eyes. As the lions age, their fur becomes more cream-colored. Preferring to live in semi-arid habitats like grasslands and savannas, they are known to hunt large animals like wildebeests, buffaloes, impalas, gazelles, and zebras. Ranging from 240 to 400 pounds, the females are slightly smaller than the males, who have been known to reach over 550 pounds and stand from 3 to 4 feet. Reaching the age of maturity around 3 or 4 years of age, Transval lions only live to about 10 years in the wild. Ethiopian Lion. In a remote national park in Ethiopia, a species of lion believed to be extinct was rediscovered in 2016. Wildlife conservationists from Oxford University in England had heard stories from park staff and locals about lions living in Alatash National Park in northwest Ethiopia near Sudan. After setting up a series of cameras to capture photos overnight, the team captured images of the rare Central African species, the Ethiopian lion. Although the original population of lions at the early part of last century saw some 400,000 lions cross Africa, the count has now dwindled to only around 20,000, so for conservationists, these sightings are exciting. With an estimated 100 to 200 lions believed to live in the national park. Although some might believe poaching is the main reason for such declines, Wildlife Program Manager Mark Jones believes conflict with locals, loss of habitat, and loss of prey are more dire consequences for the lion population. Sightings of this rare species are indeed exciting. When an ornithologist from the University of Utah traveled to the Bale Mountains National Park in 2017, he intended to study the long-term effects of climate change on birds. As it turned out, he ended up stumbling upon one of the black-maned Ethiopian lions while out at night. Capturing footage of this rare creature out for a nightly stroll, a truly once-in-a-lifetime experience. Addis Ababa Lion. While you might think all lion species are related in some way, researchers recently discovered the Addis Ababa lion in Ethiopia is actually genetically different than other lion populations. Due to this finding, their hope is for stricter conservation actions to preserve the vulnerable species. The lions, whose long, dark manes and smaller size sets them visually apart from other lion species, have distinct DNA, which was discovered by a team who studied the 15 lions captive in the Addis Ababa Zoo. They found that the males at the zoo were the last existing lions to have the distinctive mane, making them genetically distinct from all existing lion populations. By treating these lions as genetically different, it would allow conservationists to further protect them from extinction. By instilling a captive breeding program, they would hopefully be able to preserve this most unique subspecies in Ethiopia, where lions continue to dwindle. Originally belonging to the late Emperor of Ethiopia, these lions continue to be a link to the past of the Ethiopian species. And while some still hope that studying them might provide links to wild relatives, protecting those that remain is the only way to stave off extinction of this unique species. White lion. In March of 2018, wildlife guides at a game reserve in South Africa came upon a sight they never expected, a rare white lion cub in the wild. While watching a male lion sleeping near the Timbavati River, a field guide at the reserve named Lyle McCabe heard the call of a young cub coming from a nearby thicket. Moving closer to investigate, McCabe saw the lion poke its head up from where it was nursing. Even though white lion cubs are not completely unheard of, they are rare, because they are only born when both parents have a recessive mutation in the gene that produces melanins. Not considered albino, these white lions are known as leucistic because they do retain some pigments on different areas of their bodies. Their majestic appearance has given them the distinction of being revered as sacred beings by tribes in southern Africa. They are also considered symbols of leadership and pride to those living in the Timbavati region. They are known to have gold or blue eyes, with black features on their noses and behind their ears. The males have white, blonde, or pale hair in their manes and on the ends of their tails. Sadly, because they look so different, it often means white lion cubs are more susceptible to attack from other predators because they stand out. Their usual tawny color allows them to more easily blend into the tall grasses and other vegetation. They also hunt more at night, which would put white lions at a further disadvantage when trying to stay camouflaged while tracking prey. Unfortunately, putting white lions into captivity to breed them is not a better option. A study done on 19 white lion cubs bred at a zoo in Italy showed that 4 were stillborn and another 13 did not survive the first month. Only one of the cubs lived for an extended period, and even then, it suffered from neurological disabilities. No one knows why they fare better in the wild as opposed to breeding in captivity, but for now, we can have some hope that even in small pockets, this rare breed, known to survive in the wild for up to 18 years, continues to persevere. Cape lion. The second largest and heaviest of lion subspecies, the Cape lion, weighed over 600 pounds and was 1.5 times larger than the average African lion. Distinguished by its thick black mane and gold fringe around its face, the big cat was known to grow up to 11 feet long and weighed up to 500 pounds. Named for their native range on the Cape of Africa, the lion was one of 2 subspecies living in the Karoo Plains of South Africa in and around Cape Town. Unfortunately, due to Dutch and English settlers coming to the continent to hunt for sport, the Cape lion, having lived from 500,000 years ago, finally went extinct when the last of the lions was killed in the mid-1800s. Some believe that because subspecies tend to interbreed, it is possible Cape lions were an isolated tribe of Transval lions, who, as we talked about already, still survive in South Africa. The sad fate of these lions can be directly connected to overhunting, but in the early 2000s, some were supposedly discovered in a Russian zoo. With plans to do genetic testing and introduce a rebreeding program to bring the now extinct species back to prominence, the hope of repopulating the Cape lion disintegrated when the zoo director died in 2010 and the zoo closed. Today, only stuffed specimens remain, with natural history museums in London, Paris, and Germany displaying these lost links to a noble species gone too soon. The Devil's Sinkhole. In Rock Springs, Texas, there's a deep, dark sinkhole that's estimated to be around 400 feet deep, and with a name like the Devil's Sinkhole, you just know that it's got to be creepy. And in fact, there are pieces of archaeological evidence around the area which suggests that the site might have been considered sacred by the Native Americans who lived there. Near the sinkhole, there are a few ancient camping areas. After picking through the things left there, they date these encampments between 2500 and 4000 BC. Native people likely found the Devil's Sinkhole quite useful because they were able to extract large quantities of chert, a great Stone Age resource, from its interior. And years later, it became a hangout for cowboys whose graffiti still lines the walls of the hole, but it's perhaps best known for the large amount of bats that live there. When it's hot enough, around 3 million bats emerge from inside to look for snacks. Located inside the Devil's Sinkhole State Natural Area, you can't go inside of the sinkhole itself. Local officials are trying their best to protect the bats, but you can go see the flight of the bats. Have you ever been to this natural area before? Tell me how it was down below. A Greco-gypsum stack. In 1994, a giant 15-story sinkhole developed in Mulberry, Florida, underneath an unfortunate place, an 80 million ton stack of gypsum, which is a toxic, slightly radioactive material. This was not good news for Florida because it infected a good chunk of the state's drinking water. Some estimates go so far as to say this sinkhole injected more than 215 million gallons of contaminated water directly into Florida's water supply. In particular, this toxic water went through the Florida aquifer, which accounts for around 60% of Florida's drinkable water. This water was about as acidic as lemon juice. There were great efforts put into place after the formation of this sinkhole, and the project cost the area millions. The sinkhole itself was 45 feet wide, almost 300 feet deep, and had a volume of around 2 million cubic feet. The hole was nicknamed Journey to the Center of the Earth by locals. It's good that they got enough distance from this disaster to give it a fun name, because it couldn't have been fun to contain this disaster. Ohio Sinkhole. In Crooksville, Ohio, a local pizza joint, Sprankles Village Pizza, had to be demolished because a large 20-foot sinkhole developed directly underground. It was almost big enough that they were worried the whole building might fall into the ground. It's impossible to predict when and where sinkholes are going to form, so it's quite sad whenever a good restaurant falls prey to these random natural disasters. It was the first pizza restaurant in all of Crooksville and had been there for around 50 years. The sinkhole caused the first floor to partly collapse, leading to a lot of internal destruction. When the sinkhole formed, employees and locals flocked to the building to rescue as much equipment, and pizza, I imagine, as they could. Sadly, the business didn't have any insurance, but at least the community is getting together to pay for the place to be demolished. What happened though? The family that owned it thinks that it's because of the combination of living in between a creek and some railroad tracks. The water probably conducted some erosion on its own, and the constant shaking of trains didn't help. But at least the community will always have their memories of Sprankles. Bimma Sinkhole. The residents of a northern Oman town, Bimma, made the most of a dire situation and turned a giant sinkhole in their town into a big swimming park. And even though you might not think that a sinkhole could be made up, it's actually pretty beautiful. Look here at the beautiful turquoise waters inside the sinkhole, and you can see that this might be a place you should visit. For years, locals thought that the giant depression in the earth was due to a meteorite, and in fact, many of them still do. That's why the local name for the park is Hawit Najm, which means the falling star. Legends are resistant like that, but geologists have looked into the site and they claim that the formation is a natural sinkhole, and it's deeper than most pools you'll be able to visit, extending approximately 65 feet into the earth. As you can see, you don't have to climb down into the sinkhole to have a good time. Local officials have built a long staircase that extends into the swimming hole. It wasn't a natural formation, alas. The water is mighty salty, but if you're adventurous, you can still go and dive off the cliffs inside the sinkhole. The Dead Sea Sinkholes. Over the past few decades, thousands of sinkholes, ranging from tiny to relatively large, have been appearing near the Dead Sea. Scarily, this has been happening for a while without any warning signs, making tourism there a dangerous venture. You don't want to visit someplace if you think that you're going to fall into the earth, especially if the whole point is to experience the sea's healing, mineral-abundant waters. So why has this been happening? Scientists have figured out some answers. The Dead Sea's water level has been continuously shrinking for years, and now it's going at a pretty fast rate. Every year, the Dead Sea's waters shrink by around 3 feet. As this happens, the groundwater pools around large layers of salt, which the Dead Sea has in droves. It's approximately 3 times saltier than the world's oceans. However, once the groundwater dissolves these areas of salt, they leave gaping holes underneath the ground. They implode on themselves and create sinkholes, and sadly, it's very hard to predict when they're going to come about. The water level is decreasing because it is receiving less water from the Jordan River. Have you ever seen any of these sinkholes that form around the Dead Sea? Let me know in the comments below. Zhan Kang. The Zhan Kang, also known as the Heavenly Pit, is one of the biggest natural sinkholes on Earth, and technically, the world's deepest sinkhole that we've found. It's estimated to be somewhere between 1,677 to 2,172 feet deep. It has an upper bowl and a lower bowl, which are both connected by a sort of rocky slope. Sometimes a waterfall will even form if it's rainy enough. Scientists think that the Zhan Kang formed over the Defang Cave. They say that after the cave had eroded enough due to an underground river, it collapsed entirely, creating a giant sinkhole above the ground. Geological processes take a long time, and this historical story takes place over about 2 million years. But humans have known about the sinkhole since antiquity. You can go see it for yourself, now that there is a giant staircase descending deep inside of it. The bottom of this sinkhole is also a unique area of biology. Because the bottom is so large, it can sustain a great variety of flora and fauna, like ginkgo biloba. Some have even spotted clouded leopards at the bottom, which has a population of less than 10,000. These features make the Zhan Kang one of the most intriguing natural attractions that the modern world has to offer. Guatemalan Sinkhole. In 2010, a giant sinkhole appeared in the middle of Guatemala City. This isn't the first time it's happened. In fact, because of the city's deteriorating infrastructure underground, sinkholes keep appearing in random places. But this one was the biggest yet. Onlookers judged that the sinkhole had around a 60-foot diameter and that it went around 300 feet deep into the ground. That's around the height of a 30-story building. But it's not the city's infrastructure alone that's causing these sinkholes to pop up everywhere. All of its infrastructure is built in an area whose ground is made of pumice fill, which is a gravel-esque volcanic flow which gets condensed into solid rock once it cools down. But in Guatemala City, this material hadn't yet hardened. Even lightly running water can trigger a dangerous process of erosion. In fact, the way that it probably developed is that the creation of this underground sewage infrastructure, already in a less than ideal location, was accelerated by the arrival of volcanic ash from nearby eruptions. If that was able to get into the sewage system, that could have made sinkhole-prone ruptures far more probable. This giant sinkhole is a big indicator that we need to keep an eye out on what's going on underneath our cities. Great Blue Hole. The Great Blue Hole, located in Belize, is one of the most magnificent sinkholes in the entire world. It is an underwater sinkhole in Lighthouse Reef and seems almost perfectly circular. Its dimensions are also impressive. It has a diameter of nearly 1,000 feet and it goes about 410 feet down into the ocean. In terms of underwater sinkholes, it's the largest of its kind, but it is well known around the world for its distinctive appearance. No one is quite sure about when the Great Blue Hole formed, but scientists have some clues. In particular, they analyzed the hole's giant interior stalactites and stalagmites. Through this, they've estimated that the hole started to form somewhere around 153,000 years ago. When sea levels were really low during the Ice Age, this hole was above ground, enabling the formation of the stalactites and stalagmites. Then the ocean water rose once more, filling it in. The water at the Great Blue Hole is very clear and free from human intervention. When explorers recently returned to map the hole, they found only 2 pieces of plastic trash. Because of this, it's a popular spot for scuba divers who can get really good views of the local flora and fauna. So you can go see this wonder of the world for yourself. Have you ever had the chance to scuba dive in the Great Blue Hole? Let me know in the comments. Katara Depression. Located next to the border between Egypt and Libya, the Katara Depression is the largest sinkhole on Earth. We've discussed some crazy big sinkholes on this list, but how about one that's nearly as big as a tiny country? We can only look to that Katara Depression for that distinction. It's humongous. It's approximately 80 kilometers long and 120 kilometers wide, covering over 7,000 square miles of land. At its deepest, it can reach about 480 feet into the ground. This sinkhole didn't form all at once, but rather over the course of thousands of years. Salts caused the ground rock there to erode, and then the desert winds blew these sands away. In time, this took away a great chunk of bedrock and left the groundwater to seep through, giving the area a quicksand-like quality. Because of this, a great deal of it is treacherous to travel through. Wouldn't want to get stuck in a sludge pile. However, there is a possibility that the Katara Depression is so deep that it could be used as a power source for Egypt. Engineers have designed plans to place a big tunnel into the sinkhole and fill it with water, which would then evaporate and refill as time passed, generating a ton of hydroelectric energy. It would definitely be an inventive way to power the country, so hopefully this development continues to receive support as the years go by. Part of the food chain. Think of the great white sharks as not only a top predator in the sea, but also an important part of the food chain. Great whites have been around for more than 450 million years, 200 million years before dinosaurs, making them a key part in keeping the ocean system healthy. They need to eat a lot. Sure, sharks dine on animals smaller than them, but it is an important part of the food chain. With their ability to balance the ocean's ecosystem by maintaining the species below them, they play a vital role in keeping the ocean healthy. By removing the weak or sick species, they also keep balance with competitors, helping to ensure diversity. If they were to be removed from the ocean altogether, it would alter the feeding habits and diets of other species. Underwater plants such as seagrass and coral reefs would also be affected, with both declining, throwing the ecosystem into chaos. Removing sharks from the coral reef ecosystem would mean larger predatory fish would increase and feed on the herbivores, increasing algae, further polluting the oceans, and directly affecting the coral reef systems, which are already suffering from climate change. So, although they may get a bad rap, the great white is a vital piece of the ecological puzzle. Too smart to be caged. Although TV shows and movies make out sharks to be big, scary predators, they are in fact quite misunderstood. With more than 400 shark species in the world, great whites are one of the most recognizable. But they are not just mindless drones, and instead are known to create mental maps that allow them to sense not only magnetic fields, but to read the signals from ocean currents, determine water temperature, and even smell other creatures. A self-sufficient species, these animals have also been known to learn how to recognize shapes and optical illusions that they can remember for at least a year. All of this swimming and global mapping means that putting them in an aquarium is not going to be enough for them. A study done on juvenile sharks showed that they were able to recognize and remember shapes after being kept in a special holding tank into which images were projected onto the walls. 4 sharks were taught to choose a triangle, and when they did so, they received a small piece of food for pressing their nose on the triangle-shaped button. The study done by a university in Germany showed that recognition, visual cues, and translating them into earning a reward was an experiment that provided surprising results. However, like orcas, in captivity they don't do very well. Their size. Ranging from 47 meters in length and weighing up to 400 kilograms, sharks are one of the largest predators of the ocean. Although their narrow pointed snout, pectoral fins, and dorsal fin are distinct properties characteristics of the shark, it is their size that proves to be a downfall to keeping them in captivity. Because these aquatic animals have to constantly swim forward to allow water to pass over their gills to provide them oxygen, any aquarium would need to have a massive tank to keep the shark not only happy, but healthy. Sharks also travel over huge distances in the wild, with one female shark once documented to have traveled from Africa to Australia and back again, taking just 9 months to travel to 12,400 miles. In 2004, the Monterey Bay Aquarium kept a great white shark alive for 198 days. Holding 1 million gallons of water and reaching a depth of 35 feet, the tank was specially designed for open ocean animals. With the shark only measuring 4 feet long, it was much smaller than the average adult great white, which measures around 15 feet. Because it was much smaller, the shark mostly consumed fish instead of the usual diets of seals, sea turtles, and small whales that more mature great whites eat. Although this allowed for an easier time feeding the animal, the tight dietary needs of the great white were not the only problem. The staff at the Monterey Bay Aquarium later moved the shark into a 4 million gallon pen that allowed them to monitor it before they transported it from Southern California to the Monterey Bay campus. But within 6 months of capture and display, the aquarium decided to release the shark into the wild after it attacked 2 other sharks in captivity. Over the years, the aquarium continued to display other infant great whites, but none of them lasted the same amount of time as the original great white did. Feeding rituals. Sharks need live prey to stay alive, so having to continually keep them in seals, sea lions, dolphins, and whale corpses, their favorite foods, is not only difficult, but might turn away aquarium guests who might not want to watch the particularly gruesome spectacle of shark feedings. A carnivorous creature, sharks feed on smaller animals including squids, rays, and other fish. They are also known to catch turtles and seabirds, preferring a fat-rich prey. This means that aquarium staff would need to procure a variety of food for any sharks they keep in captivity. Beyond that, a shark has particular feeding habits, using their electroreceptors to locate food. Because they tend to stalk their prey, and then inflict a deadly bite and wait for the animal to bleed out before eating it, it would make for a particularly gruesome display for the general public coming to visit these predators. Even though most people have a picture of a malevolent feeding machine, great whites are actually finicky eaters. Scientists found that some great whites even engage in ritualized competition over kills, with the two slapping their tails on the sea surface to determine who is the winner. Some researchers even found that when the sharks are unable to capture food, they get visibly frustrated and agitated, and can even become sad and dejected. It makes sense that without the ability to hunt in the open ocean, sharks in captivity would lose their sense of hunting and normal behavior and stop eating altogether. Affecting the economy. Although the environmental and ecological effects are more important than money, it's hard to disregard how removing sharks from the oceans would indirectly affect the economy. A study done in North Carolina showed that by losing great white sharks in their waters, stingray populations were increased, resulting in more bay scallops being eaten by predators and fisheries having to be closed. Without scallops to eat, the rays moved on to other bivalves, including clams that were used in many restaurants. Food aside, sharks are a large draw for ecotourists. In the Bahamas, dive tourism can make up to $250,000 by having a single live reef shark in the ocean for tourists to visit. But when caught by fishermen, sharks are only worth $50 to the fishermen who caught it. Similarly, a whale shark in Belize has been known to bring in $200 million over its lifetime to tourists who want to swim with and see the sharks in their natural habitat. Although the health and safety of these animals are most important, there is a definite connection between sharks and the economy. A protected species. One of the most dangerous predators in the ocean, sharks are not only feared but protected. They are mostly illegally hunted, with the capture and killing of great whites against the law. Protected in California waters since 1994 and in the American Atlantic waters since 1997, the great white is one of 10 other shark species that are protected from fishing in American waters. But why is such a fearsome predator so protected? Dating back more than 400 million years, sharks are much older than dinosaurs. Their unique senses of smell, hearing, touch, taste, sight, and even electromagnetism make it one of the top predators in the ocean. Even though the image of a shark in the water strikes fear in the heart of many people, the only real threat to their survival are humans. Often killed by getting caught in long lines and trawlers, they are also sometimes victims of illegal poaching for those who want to sell their fins for soup. Sport fishermen also sometimes target sharks to obtain their jaws as trophies. With an estimated 100 million sharks killed every year by fisheries, it would be a shame to see these ancient predators become extinct in our lifetime. Tank confusion. Many fish, including sharks, have evolved to travel fast and for great distances in the open ocean. Glass enclosures such as tanks and aquariums prove to be not only dangerous but fatal to those sharks brought into places like SeaWorld and San Francisco's Steinhardt Aquarium in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. When sharks were kept in glass enclosures, they tended to ram into walls and injure themselves. It is believed that being surrounded by glass could confuse or overload the shark's electroreception system that helps them to sense electrical signals given off by fish in the open ocean. Although the Monterey Bay Aquarium once housed a great white shark in 2004, the large tank and intensive support wasn't enough to keep the shark safe. Even though they used a smaller baby shark, it didn't stop it from having health issues, and after 190 days, they released the shark and stopped hosting them in 2011. A glass tank inside a building just seems like an unnatural place for a shark, so although it might be nice to see one up close, knowing how they can suffer makes keeping them in the wild seem that much more important. Active behavior. The fact the great whites are not only solitary fish but are active both day and night would make it a strenuous task to keep them happy if they were to be in captivity. The fact that they also sometimes jump out of the water to look around for prey would also make it difficult to keep them contained in a small tank. A powerful and aggressive predator, great whites are a dominant species, so it would make it difficult for them to be placed in the vicinity of any other marine animals. A predator at the top of the food chain, any worries about sharks attacking people don't seem to be a reason not to add them to the roster at a local museum. But these large fish are simply ones that should not be tamed. Their gills aren't only to help them breathe, their gills are also used to remove carbon dioxide waste from the shark's body. Because other shark species have different methods of breathing, it is safe for them to be kept in aquariums. Both nurse and bullhead sharks use their mouth muscles to draw water into their mouths and over their gills, which allows them to breathe while still. Others use a method called ram ventilation, where they swim with their mouths open, pushing water through their gills. Great whites, as well as makos and whale sharks, use this method to breathe, which is why if they stop swimming, they can die. Keeping them comfortable. Found in both tropical coastal waters and even cold water, great whites thrive everywhere from the coast of North America, from Newfoundland to southern Mexico in the Atlantic Ocean, and from Alaska to southern Mexico in the Pacific. They also dwell in waters of South Africa, the Mediterranean, Japan, and Oceania. With such a varied locale, it would take a lot of work to adapt an indoor habitat for great whites. In the open ocean, they tend to inhabit water up to 1,200 meters deep, even going so far as to swim up to 1,875 meters deep. Needing such a varied habitat, it seems like it would take a lot of trial and error to get the climate right. A study done in 2014 estimated that the region between 660 and 3,300 feet below the ocean's surface had 10 times more fish than originally believed. With colder water at deeper distances, sharks do this to take advantage of abundant prey in the ocean's depths. A hostile community. Even though sharks are at the top of the food chain, that doesn't mean that other fish can't be a threat to them. Triggerfish, angelfish, and puffers can all injure smaller sharks. Figuring all this out in an aquarium doesn't seem like an easy feat. If the shark is big, it will eat everything, and if it's small enough to fit in an aquarium, there are many things that can be harmful to it. It might seem strange to think that a smaller fish could injure a shark, but if one were to accidentally put a porcupine fish in the same tank as a shark, it could prove deadly for the predator. Photos of a hungry shark who tried to swallow a spiny porcupine fish are evidence enough that the pair can be dangerous together. After the shark suffocated on its supper, the porcupine fish became stuck halfway in the shark's mouth and blocked the predator's gills. Just because the great white is one of the most feared fish in the ocean, that doesn't mean there aren't things that make them vulnerable. Maybe knowing that will make you a little less leery the next time you go for a swim and see a shadow dart below the surface. Or not. Thanks for watching. What do you think about great whites? Do you like aquariums? Let us. Hi everyone! From extremely endangered species to practically mythological creatures, here are 10 wolves you won't believe exist. Arctic wolf. The Arctic wolf is unbelievable in its adorableness. They look an awful lot like Arctic foxes, and they are some of the most elusive and non-threatened wolves in the world. They are one of the only animals in the world whose habitat is not currently being destroyed. This is because they live in Greenland and the Arctic regions of North America, and they are heavily isolated. Arctic wolves are also sometimes known as polar wolves or white wolves, and they can weigh up to an amazing 175 pounds, 8 kilograms. They can also be roughly 6 feet, 2 meters in length. If you were to stumble upon one of these wolves in the wild, probably you wouldn't even know. Their white coat lets them blend in with the snow just like a polar bear. One interesting fact is that they can eat more than 20 pounds, 9 kilograms of meat at once thanks to their sharp teeth and large jaws. Can you imagine eating this much meat in one meal? It's too much. Black Timberwolf. There is nothing more terrifying than a giant black timberwolf with sharp fangs and red eyes. Black wolves are the most terrifying and most fearsome of any other species of wolf, and while they don't have red eyes, they are pretty intimidating. Nobody knows this more than a man who recently shot a video of what appears to be a black timberwolf chasing a dog through the forest. The Timberwolf is completely black, covered in shaggy fur, and appears to be roughly 7 feet, 2 meters in length. The video is short, but you can clearly see this monstrous wolf leaping through the skinny trees of northern Saskatchewan in the wilds of the Canadian North. But this is not the only black timber wolf in the region. The north of Canada is home to hundreds and hundreds of these ferocious predators, and your dog would not stand a chance in a fight. Supposedly, the man who spotted this giant wolf did so through the window of his lodge. After his dog tried to chase the wolf away, the wolf took charge and threw the dog into the air by its back end. It was only after the man shot his shotgun into the air that the wolf turned and ran. As hard as it is to believe, these types of ferocious wolves do indeed prowl the wilderness. Don't you think that's terrifying? What would you do if a wolf this size was chasing you or your dog? Let me know in the comments below. Man-eating gray wolves. This is a pretty unbelievable story about some seriously ferocious wolves. In northern Saskatchewan, in the same region where the giant black wolf was spotted in our previous story, there have been packs of gray wolves getting bolder and bolder and going so far as to attack human prey. For anybody that doesn't know about the power of a gray wolf, an adult can easily bite through the thick bones of a moose just like a hyena might crunch through the bones of a dead animal. When it comes to biting into human flesh, gray wolves do not have a single issue. It's like us biting into an orange. Gray wolves are fast, they're predatory, and now they hold no fear of people. According to the National Post, in 2016, a gray wolf in Saskatchewan attacked a 26-year-old kitchen worker in the middle of the night near the Cigar Lake uranium mine. A security guard stumbled upon the scene, and had it not been for the bright lights of the security guard's vehicle, the worker very well could have died. And this is not the only incident of a wolf attacking a human in the same region. Other victims are not so lucky. In 2005, a university student was killed, and according to the forensic evidence, it was because of a wolf attack. Believe it or not, it seems that wolves are striking back. Sea wolves. You have heard of gray wolves, timber wolves, Arctic wolves, and even dire wolves. But have you heard of sea wolves? If you didn't know any better, you would never even believe sea wolves are real, but they are. National Geographic even did a segment on them. In a world of endangered species, wolves being hunted to the brink of endangerment and shrinking habitats, wolves have adapted to a life at sea. There is now a new breed of wolf who have started swimming and eating seafood. On the coast of British Columbia, there is a new group of wolves who are being referred to as sea wolves because of their bizarre adaptation to swimming between small coastal islands and hunting fish and other types of seafood rather than land animals. However, to catch their shellfish, these wolves must be incredibly competent swimmers, and that is exactly how they have adapted. They can swim for miles at a time, their longest swim being over 7 miles, 12 kilometers. The British Columbian coast is a perfect spot for these animals to roam, as it is incredibly isolated with roughly 21 million acres of undisturbed wilderness. In that quiet space, the sea wolves have been evolving. They are now genetically different from other species, and it is a bizarre sight to see these wolves hanging out on the beach, swimming in the ocean, and hunting seafood. It's straight up unbelievable. Northwestern Wolf. Let's stop and take a minute to talk about one of the world's largest wolves. The Northwestern Wolf is an absolutely unbelievable animal. It is majestic, it is gorgeous, and it is massive. This wolf probably weighs the same as you or a little more. The Northwestern Wolf can grow to be roughly 170 pounds, 80 kilograms. They are typically found in western North America, ranging from Alaska, south through the western Canadian provinces, and all the way to the northwestern United States. They live in forests and mountains, and normally roam in a family group of between 6 and 12 wolves. They have excellent sight, stupendous hearing, and some of the best noses in the animal kingdom. They can reach a top speed of 40 miles an hour, 64 kilometers, which is definitely faster than you have of any hope of outrunning. But unless you are roaming in the wilderness, you are very unlikely to have a standoff with a Northwestern Wolf. They also go by Alaskan Timberwolf, Canadian Timberwolf, Mackenzie Valley Wolf, and Rocky Mountain Wolf. Now for number 5, but first, did you know that wolves are believed to have been first domesticated about 15,000 years ago? Let me know in the comments below. Yuki the Wolf Dog. Meet Yuki the Wolf Dog. 87.5% gray wolf, 8.6% Siberian Husky, and 3.9% German Shepherd. Yuki is an extremely unique animal, almost completely wolf with just a dash of a dog in his genes. Yuki became famous after photos of him at the Shy Wolf Animal Sanctuary were put online. Yuki is almost 15 years old now. He weighs around 120 pounds and is arguably the most famous wolf dog in the world. It's hard for anyone to believe how big this wolf and dog hybrid truly is. He eats about 40 pounds of raw meat in a week, he's extremely friendly, and he has a strange love for attention, specifically by the female volunteers who work at the animal shelter in Naples, Florida. Despite Yuki's huge size, he is not the dominant animal in his enclosure. He shares his cage with another wolf dog, a female named Bella. Bella is smaller and is the dominant animal in their enclosure. It's hard to believe that these two spectacular animals can be alive today, but it's all thanks to selective breeding and the kindness of volunteers at animal shelters. You won't find a wolf dog like Yuki roaming the wild, but his breed is actually getting more and more popular with specialized breeders. Before long, we may see lots of wolf dogs at the park. Canadian Killer Wolf. Another terrifying story of a wolf attack. Most people think about wolves as timid creatures who hunt in packs and stick to the shadows, but a New Jersey family just discovered how horribly wrong this misconception is. This was back in 2019. The couple from New Jersey were camping with their 2 sons in Banff National Park, Canada. They were in their tent when the absolutely unthinkable happened. A wolf literally tore open their tent, attacked the family, then tried to drag the man out of the tent into the night. According to the Calgary Herald, the man's wife had to grab him by the legs while the wolf was trying to drag him away. This is not your everyday camping trip, and this is one seriously unbelievable wolf. But don't be scared of your next trip to the Great White North. Being attacked by wolves is not an everyday occurrence. According to Parks Canada, the wolf was very likely in a deteriorating condition and nearing the end of its life, and was therefore desperate for food. Luckily, in this horror movie, nobody in the family was seriously injured. 06. For those who don't know, Yellowstone National Park over 10 years ago began trying to repopulate the park with wildlife, and more specifically with wolves. When the wolves were reintroduced into Yellowstone National Park, it sparked an explosion of other animals also returning to the park, including bald eagles and beavers. None of the wolves were more visible or more famous than 06, the alpha female of a pack of wolves in the park. She was first discovered by wolf watchers in 2009 as a lone wolf, but quickly established her territory and became incredibly famous. She even mated with several different males without ever settling down. But why was she special? Well, it's dangerous for wolves to roam alone when you're trying to establish territory. Most wolves end up going back to their home pack or being killed by rival packs, but she had a special ability to avoid trouble and was very adept at handling territorial rivalries. Unfortunately, in 2012, she was shot and killed by a trophy hunter. While it didn't happen inside the park as the wolf had been wandering at the time, it was not technically illegal. Nonetheless, this was a pretty tragic end to the park's famous resident, and it caused an international outcry just like when Cecil the Lion was murdered in 2015. The Wolfman. Meet the incredible Wolfman. Marcos Rodriguez Pantoja was abandoned as a child and survived for 15 years in the wild while being raised by wolves. He may not be a genetic wolf, but that doesn't make him any less of an unbelievable creature. It happened in 1953, and as a child who was 7 years old, he was abandoned to fend for himself. He ended up being raised by wolves who protected him, sheltered him, and raised him like one of their own. This man lost the use of his language and fully transformed into a wolf, though not physically, barking, screeching, and howling. According to The Guardian, he was discovered 12 years later by police, hiding in the mountains. They found him wrapped in deerskin, his hair long and matted, and completely savage. The police had to catch him and bind his hands and then bring him to the nearest village. He was eventually brought to Madrid, where he was put through a type of rehab and received a remedial education from nuns at a monastery. The man is okay now, though he has not had a very pleasant time being human. For many years after being discovered in the wilderness, Rodriguez struggled with society and people took advantage of him. In 2010, Spanish director Gerardo Oliveras released a film, Entre Lobos, Among Wolves, based on Rodriguez's life in the mountains. Have you seen this famous movie? Tell me about it in the comments below. Dire wolves. Yes, dire wolves are real. Or rather, they used to be real. Back in the last ice age, there were enormous wolves then used to hunt bison and other massive animals, sometimes even small mammoths. However, just like the woolly mammoth and the saber-toothed tiger, dire wolves went extinct several thousand years ago. But yes, they existed. And in the south of Oregon, there is one breeder who has spent the last 30 years of his life trying to recreate the ancient dire wolf. He calls the breed American Alsatian, and the puppies are extremely adorable. They grow to be tall and broad with golden eyes and very wolfish features. The man who breeds these animals is really hoping that with more time they can grow in size and look more like the wolves from thousands of years ago. It would be about 10,000 years ago that the last dire wolf died out. Whether or not he can recreate an actual dire wolf is yet to be seen. Thanks for watching. Which of these wolves is the most unbelievable? Which one did you like the most? Tell me in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. From birds that would kill you with a single kick to stalkers that will harass you all the way home, here are the 10 most dangerous birds on Earth. Great Horned Owl. Owls are some of the most mysterious feathered animals in the world. They're comical, they are sometimes adorable, and they do that weird swivel thing with their head that chills the blood. But owls are also fierce and vicious, specifically the Great Horned Owl. And yes, these owls attack people. The most common time a great horned owl is going to attack a person is when they are defending their young. This can happen when an unsuspecting jogger or hiker comes too close for the owl's comfort. If the owl feels in danger, it will strike. Luckily, there are almost no deaths that occur from owl attacks, but the attacks still happen. Owls much prefer to hunt small rodents and other small birds than attack humans, and so you should keep your dogs and cats close if you live in a wooded area that has a lot of great horned owls. This horned owl's strong claws require a force of 28 pounds, 13 kilograms, to open. Owls use their deadly grip to slice the spine of their prey. It's terrifying. They have been known to steal small dogs, and they have a clutch force of about 500 psi with their talons. This is a great enough force to disfigure, to blind, and definitely to fly away with your chihuahua. Most owls are stronger than most hawks, which is not something everybody knows. Australian magpie. The Australian magpie is famous for being the most bothersome bird in the country. They are infamous for attacking cyclists, for swooping at people who happen to be walking too close to where they place their nest, and for being generally annoying. People typically refer to the Australian magpie as the most psychotic bird on Earth. It does not have sharp talons that could kill a person, and it doesn't have enough brass to poke you in the eye with its beak, but it is still extremely dangerous. Magpies are dangerous because of what happens when an annoying bird begins flapping around your head. They can cause cyclists to get into accidents, they can cause people to lose control of their bicycle and throw them into traffic, or they can cause you to fall and hurt yourself. What's interesting is the extremes people have gone through to keep magpies away from them. Some people wear wide-brimmed hats, while others carry umbrellas, and when it comes to cyclists, some people have installed spikes on their helmets to try and keep the lunatic magpies away from them. Although some people think they are very attractive birds and very often make friends with whoever provides them with food, relationships can go in the opposite direction. One man claimed that for 25 years he had been attacked by the same magpie. It's too long to have an enemy of this level. Have you ever been attacked by a magpie? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Lammergeier. This is the lammergeier, also known as the bearded vulture. Not only does this bird look dangerous and vile, but it absolutely is. This is the scariest looking bird flying through the skies today. It looks like a prehistoric eagle. The bearded vulture has a wingspan of roughly 10 feet, 3 meters. It lives in mountainous regions from Central Asia to Spain, and it eats mainly carrion. In fact, the bearded vulture loves scavenging. A huge portion of its diet is marrow, about 90% of it. The classic trait of the bearded vulture is to pick up bones, turtles, and other hard meals and drop them from high in the sky, breaking them open on rocks so that they can get at the marrow. And this is where they end up being dangerous. The bird may not attack you itself, despite its terrifying appearance, but it could drop a tortoise on you from 260 feet in the sky. And you can bet that is going to leave a pretty nasty bruise. This is especially true if you happen to be bald and the vulture mistakes your head for a rock. Red-tailed hawk. The red-tailed hawk is a relatively common bird found widely distributed across North America. They weigh very little for such large birds, only between 2 and 4 pounds, with a wingspan that can be up to 56 inches, 140 centimeters. Unlike other birds that fly around looking for prey, the red-tailed hawk generally hunts from a perch. This means it sits somewhere and watches for its next meal, then swoops down to take it. This hawk can see 8 times better than you, and it can see color in the ultraviolet range. It basically has a cyborg's eyes. Fortunately, this popular hawk is not the most dangerous bird in the world, unless perhaps you get between it and its food. The people most at risk from these hawks are their trainers, as a red-tailed hawk has a grip strength of about 200 psi. That's 4 times what your grip strength is, and very close to the bite of a big dog. This is why trainers wear big, heavy-duty gloves when dealing with red-tailed hawks. White swan. Swans are incredibly dangerous animals. These birds are big, weighing up to nearly 30 pounds, and they have a surprising amount of power. However, these birds do not generally kill human beings. You are more likely to suffer a swan attacking your dog or child than attacking you. The males are fierce in defense of their nests, especially during the spring nesting season from April to June, and this is something you always need to keep in mind when visiting any public park with swans. These birds are huge and can be seriously bad-tempered. Take the case of a 37-year-old man who was murdered by a swan back in 2012 outside of Chicago. According to the BBC, the man was tending to the birds when one of the swans charged his small boat, capsized it, and inadvertently caused the man to drown. Eyewitnesses told the investigators that the swan actively hindered the man from reaching safety and watched sadistically as he drowned. So, you tell me, are swans dangerous evil villains or innocent bystanders? Crowned eagle. Did you know that primitive humanity was on the menu of the crowned eagles? According to CBS News, there is an extremely ancient fossil of a primitive human child who appears to have died when attacked by a crowned eagle. There are markings around the eye sockets of the ancient skull that suggest an eagle got a hold of it and ate it for dinner. Eagles are the most majestic birds in the world, and while most North Americans are familiar with the symbolic bald eagle, there are dozens of different types of eagles all over the world. Today, we are talking about the crowned eagle, which is often referred to as the leopard of the air. These birds come from Africa, and they are one of the deadliest species of eagle in existence. In terms of this incredible bird's diet, it eats about 90% of mammals. That means only 10% of its diet is made up of something other than monkeys and deer. There are even rumors that children's skulls have been found in the nests of crowned eagles, kinda like how in North America we often find dog collars and cat collars in abandoned eagle nests. Well, I'll just say that if we ever got her in front of us, we'd better run. Emu. The emu is not the most dangerous flightless bird, it is not the heaviest, and it is not the tallest. However, the emu is the ugliest. There is nothing more unnerving than looking into the beady orange eyes of an ornery emu, and while they are the least threatening of the 3 giant flightless birds on Earth, emus are still pretty dangerous. They can run at about 30 miles, 50 kilometers per hour, and kick with massive feet that can do some serious damage to a human being, especially if one of their claws digs into your belly. Emus are capable of basically dissecting animals without any effort. Human fatalities via emus are indeed extremely rare, but emu attacks are not. These annoying birds are so cranky they will attack anyone, and who can blame them? Most emus are taller than most humans, and the common emu is the only survivor of several different emu species, all of which were exterminated by settlers hundreds of years ago. If humans wiped out your ancestors, you would be cranky too. Ostrich. There is almost nothing more terrifying in the world than a rampaging ostrich. If you thought a cassowary or an emu was big, ostriches can grow to be 9 feet, 3 meters tall, and over 300 pounds, 140 kilograms. Imagine the strongest person you know with a bad attitude, then add an extra 2 feet and a beak that could rip your face off. Now imagine that same person can run 43 miles an hour, 70 kilometers an hour. That's an ostrich. The ostrich is not an animal you want to mess with. They are incredibly territorial when defending their young, and they are even strong enough to kill a lion. While the lion may be the king of the jungle, it wouldn't stand much of a chance against a rampaging ostrich kicking it square in the face. A fun bit of trivia for you, the famous singer Johnny Cash actually used to own an ostrich of particularly bad temperament, and according to Cash, he once got in a scuffle with the ostrich, which kicked him in the abdomen. If it weren't for the ostrich's claw getting caught on Cash's belt buckle, he likely would have died, and that would have been a tragic way to go. Giant petrel. Forget about sharks and tigers, these birds are straight up savages. One of the last birds you ever want to be attacked by is a giant petrel, and despite this bird's absolute ferocity, you probably had no idea it even existed. These are serious killers, and there are 2 different species of giant petrel competing to be the most feared bird of Antarctica. You have the northern giant petrel and the southern giant petrel, and even though they are different species, they are both horrific murderers and they both like to prey on the animals in Antarctica in the winter. For these birds to have survived for so long, they developed an incredibly aggressive style of feeding that makes them unbelievably dangerous. These are not only relentless scavengers, but they will kill other birds like albatrosses. They will eat penguins, snatch baby animals, and fly off with them, and there is even some pretty disturbing footage of a nasty giant petrel sticking its whole head through a sea lion's eye socket to get at its brain. That is some seriously nasty stuff. You can recognize these birds as they always appear to be drenched in blood from the tip of their beak down to the front of their whole body. They really look like something out of a horror movie, of course being the murderer. Cassowary. This is probably the one you have all been waiting for. The cassowary has long been crowned the most dangerous bird in the entire world. In fact, as recently as April of 2019, a man was attacked in Florida and later died in a hospital from serious injuries because of a cranky cassowary. This is according to Guinness World Records, and they are no stranger to the deadliest animals in the world. And while we're talking about Florida, you may be surprised to know that cassowaries are listed as Class 2 wildlife, which is in the same category as alligators and some wild cats. That's how dangerous these monstrous birds are. There are 3 different species of cassowary, and all of them are native to the tropical forests of Australia and Southeast Asia. Regardless of the exact breed of cassowary, you can bet the bird is going to be huge. They have a maximum height of nearly 7 feet, 2 meters, and can weigh up to 130 pounds, 59 kilograms. But what makes them so dangerous is their muscular legs and incredibly sharp claws. A single cassowary foot can send you straight to the hospital with a bad case of death. From courageous kitties traveling thousands of miles to expensive horses running away, here are 10 pets that returned home after being lost. Basile. This horse made the news after an accident during an endurance race in Suffolk, England last year. When the rider of the then 12-year-old grey gelding fell from the saddle, the animal struck out on its own. The name of the horse is Basile del Mulo. We think that sounds like a character from Zoolander, but never mind. He fled into the forest and disappeared for 33 hours. A major search operation was launched, which even included the RAF, police, and numerous helpers, even a drone. Basile was found in Thetford Forest, where people had been checking out hundreds of miles of terrain in an attempt to get him back. After much worry, the crazy clip-clopper was spotted and returned to his family. His owner was pretty relieved and surprised that he was uninjured after running through the forest. He apparently found a reservoir and some fresh grass, but they couldn't follow his footprints. His great escape actually made him quite famous. Following the incident at the King's Forest Spring Ride, you'd think Basile would be put off of racing. However, just weeks later, he was back on his hooves in an international endurance ride. He came 19th in the epic event at Royal Windsor, a stone's throw from Her Majesty the Queen. Give that horse a crown. Giggle Blizzard. A Florida feline went on an arduous journey in 2009. When Giggle Blizzard, and yes, that is his real name, disappeared, it left a hole in his owner's life. Not that she was short of animals, owning at the time an incredible 7 other cats plus a couple of canines for good measure. Still, this was clearly one special little furball. Reportedly, Giggle Blizzard was going for walks with dogs, so he's one tough cookie it seems, and he'd have to be, bearing in mind what happened. One day, his owner called everybody back home after letting them out, and he never came back. She searched all over the neighborhood and put an ad on Craigslist, but no news. After 11 days, with his owner no doubt going out of her mind with worry, he rocked up on her porch. It was Thanksgiving night, and she had a lot to be thankful for. So what took place over that agonizing week-and-a-half period? Poor Giggle Blizzard was involved in a nasty car accident where his back legs got squashed. I won't get into the details, but he dragged himself all the way home and after some operations lived to chase mice another day. At one point, his owner thought he'd been eaten by a vulture after seeing one with a whisker sticking out of its beak. Crazy stuff, sure, but we're pretty positive that Giggle Blizzard would have seen off such a feathery predator, no bother. The veterinary surgeon was able to save his legs, and Giggle Blizzard is quite the story of perseverance. Has anything ever happened to your cat? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe if you are new here. Reckless. This doggy tale is like something out of a movie. Prepare to go aww for the moving story of Reckless, the terrier pit bull. It opens with a dramatic scene in which New Jersey canine Reckless flees the family backyard during Superstorm Sandy in 2012. After months of looking, they made the painful decision to call off the search. Of course, it was only a matter of time before they figured a new dog might help mend their broken hearts. Enough time had passed, and really you've got to move on with these things, right? But when they went to the local animal shelter to pick one out in 2014, they found their perfect replacement, Reckless himself. Their home had been devastated by the storm all that time ago, but surely the most shattering thing was losing their precious pet. Having Reckless back in the family must have been a huge relief. Mother Nature sure does work in some mysterious ways. Hampshire horse. As you know, England loves its horses. We just talked about one four-legged friend who ran into the forest. Here's another case where endurance racing and horses did not mix. The location this time is Leafy, Hampshire, and something called the Three Rivers Ride last year. Here's another horse that went missing. It happened on a Sunday morning when horse and rider reportedly had an unexpected parting of the ways. The mare was colored black and 10 years old enough to know better maybe. She also had what's described in the press as a white star, clearly one handsome-looking horse. The rider reported that the horse went missing at 11 a.m., but she was very distressed and asked not to be named. Anxious equine hunters didn't have long to wait as the missing animal turned up 24 hours later at a nearby car park. Wonder if she got a ticket. Joking aside, there was a big search underway for this rogue pet, and people were understandably upset. It all worked out right in the end though, with nay problems. See what we did there? The horse was unharmed and luckily made it back with injury. Kuzia. Just when you think you've seen the toughest kitty on the block, another one comes along to shatter your purring preconceptions. Kuzia is a Russian cat who got lost after his owners lost him while on holiday. Yep, you're traveling over 1,000 miles to a different part of the country, why not take the cat along, huh? Kuzia was mislaid in Alenyak and eventually his heartbroken family had to go back to Yakutsk and leave him behind. Or so they thought. Kuzia wasn't going to let a little thing like being stranded miles from home stand in his way. This incredible feline found his way to the doorstep. To do this, he had to cross the wilds of Siberia. We've heard of the scenic route, but that's ridiculous. He was underweight, with no claws to speak of, and someone or something had tried chowing down on his tail. Aside from that, he seemed alright. No wonder he received the nickname Kuzia the Destroyer. That's one kitty with claws, or rather a cat without claws, but give him a break, he was lost in Siberia. Manuela. Let's slow things down for our next pick. Right down, in fact, because we're talking about a tortoise. While these don't look like the most exciting of creatures, there are some extraordinary facts about them. Take Manuela, for example, from Rio de Janeiro. She vanished for an astonishing 30 years, but it turned out she was closer to home than first thought. When building work was happening at the family home during the early 80s, it seems the family pet snuck out the door. We're thinking she snuck out very slowly, but anyway, it looked like the tortoise, a red-footed tortoise, had gone for good. Then all those years later, the trash was put out, including a wooden box from the shed. To people's amazement, they realized Manuela was inside. Apparently she'd been living in the box next to a record player over the decades. How did she get there? No one knows. And how in the half shell did she survive? Again, it's a mystery. The best guess is there were insects to munch and something to wash them down with in the form of condensation. Yuck. Luckily, redfoots eat a whole bunch of stuff, so Manuela wasn't picky. It's known that some tortoises can go for a couple of years or so without a meal. They have fat reserves to draw on, probably because of their sedentary lifestyle. Whichever way it happened, Manuela made it home. Not that she ever left. Talk about leading a sheltered life. Nigel. Next on our list is Nigel, which sounds like a weird name to give your pet. What type of creature is Nigel? A parrot. Okay, getting weirder. But it takes all sorts to make a world. Nigel is on our list because he flew far from home, but also for another reason. Guess what? It's a pretty weird reason. In 2014, Nigel, who's an African gray parrot, was returned to his owner, a British guy living in California. Nigel had been found fluttering around and a vet managed to ID him by his microchip. His owner was really happy because his precious pet had been gone an amazing 4 years. That's weird, but the really strange part is that Nigel speaks with a British accent. However, keep watching, there's a twist in the tale. When Nigel came home and opened his beak, a whole load of Spanish came out. It was then that the owner discovered where Nigel had been all this time. He'd been living with an elderly couple where he'd learned the language from a Guatemalan grandfather. He and the parrot were close, forming a bond following the death of his wife. Nigel's former owner decided it was best for him to return to his other home, waving farewell to his feathered friend. Sad, but also heartwarming. Aww. Or should that be caw? Petunia. Here's a real head scratcher from 2011. When Petunia the dog was found mixing with the local wildlife near Sacramento, California, she was taken to an animal shelter. They checked her over, saw she had a chip, and looked up her details. The chip revealed the address of Petunia's veterinary clinic. So far, so normal, huh? But there's a twist. The clinic was in Fredericksburg, North Virginia. Petunia's family were pleased to see her. In fact, they were delighted. You see, Petunia had been missing for 8 years. During that time, the beloved pet managed to travel nearly 3,000 miles across states. What happened? Did Petunia decide to go walking around the country like a littlest hobo type of situation? Did someone snatch her and she escaped? Was she abducted by aliens? If only Petunia could talk, then we'd get the lowdown on her incredible journey. Opie. Saddle up for another tale of horsing around. Well, actually this is quite serious, but don't worry, there's a happy ending. It all started when a lady in Texas went into a hospital for back surgery. Her father agreed to look after her saddlebred pinto horse, Opie, in the meantime. Unfortunately, the horse was stolen, and the family left devastated. A group called Stolen Horse International were hired to look for any suspicious hoof prints. Years went by and all hope seemed lost. Then a whole decade later, Opie turned up again. But where had he been? He was noticed by someone trying to buy a horse who realized the stallion they were interested in wasn't a regular animal but someone's missing four-legged friend. Opie's rightful owner had moved state to Arkansas and reportedly drove all night to be reunited with her pet. Amazingly, the horse recognized her after all this time. As for who stole Opie, no one knows. The person selling him was in the dark, but mention was made of a mysterious pastor who picked him up by the side of the road. We're thinking that pastor was really a horse rustler, right? Yosuke. We mentioned an African gray parrot earlier. Well, now we're introducing you to another one. How come? 'Cause this is no ordinary parrot. Meet Yosuke, from the Japanese city of Nagareyama. As a pet living in the city, you've got to keep your wits around you, and Yosuke certainly did that after he got lost. Actually, he had a lot to say for himself. Like many parrots, Yosuke was an articulate little feathered fellow. Law enforcement discovered the amazing bird on a roof and brought him down to the station for a cracker. When the vet was called in, Yosuke reportedly announced himself as Mr. Yosuke Nakamura. Not only that, but he had his home address to hand, or rather to wing. This clever creature was then returned to his comfy cage with the Nakamuras. How did he know to say his name and address to the vet? Surely Yosuke is the brainiest bird in Japan, and indeed the whole list. From underwater mythological monsters to giant animals with enormous tentacles, here are 10 of the scariest sea monsters alive today. Is there anything as terrifying as a lizardfish? These freakish monsters of the deep are miniature, only reaching about 27.5 inches, which is 70 centimeters in length, and owning a cylindrical body. But they are terrifying, and their mouths are big enough to chomp down on your leg or foot no problem. Just take a look at these long, slender, lizard-like fish predators. Yuck. They hang around on the ocean floor about 11,482 feet, that's 3,500 meters, deep in the tropical zone, with their noses tilted upwards waiting for something yummy to swim by. Then they strike with a mouthful of multiple series of sharp, needle-like teeth that they use to perforate their prey. They usually feed on crustacean and mollusk, but they won't hesitate to eat any other things, including their own kind. These sea monsters are some of the weirdest deep-sea predators, and they have eyes that are so black they appear hollow. This is mostly because the zones in which the deep-sea lizardfish lives receives less than 1% of the sunlight from above. Just about everything that lives down there is equally as creepy and nightmarish as the lizardfish. What is the scariest fish you have ever seen? Let me know in the comments below. Buck-toothed ghost shark. A brand new breed of sea monster was discovered in 2017, according to a report by Live Science. This mutant-looking shark is one of the meanest and weirdest underwater sea creatures ever, and it sure is ugly. Not just ugly, but utterly scary. It is the 50th ghost shark species ever discovered, but it might be the worst. It actually looks like it has buck teeth, which is why they call it the buck-toothed ghost shark. Its teeth look oddly like rabbit teeth, and its weird fat head looks strangely human. This particular ghost shark can grow up to be about 3 feet, 1 meter in length, and swims by moving its tail so that it appears to fly underneath the water. Interestingly enough, ghost sharks are not actual sharks. They are relatives of rays and sharks, but are considered cartilaginous fish. Whatever they are, it is probably something you don't want to meet. Goblin shark. Goblin sharks are simply terrifying. Not only do they look like underwater goblins with disgusting pointy teeth, loose gray flesh, and a sharp goblin nose, but even the way they eat is terrifying. Goblin sharks are able to thrust their jaws exactly 3 inches, 8 centimeters forward in order to catch their prey. Their jaws literally shoot out of their mouths to snatch unsuspecting fish from the water so that they can gobble them down. The only good news is that goblin fish live at the very bottom of the ocean where they belong. Considering goblin sharks are able to grow 12 feet in length and weigh around 460 pounds, it is a very good thing they live far away from us underneath the waves. In fact, these horrifying oceanic nightmares are generally spotted off the coast of Japan. They even got their name because of how much they look like the spooky goblins from Japanese folklore. Some people say that goblin sharks look like an underwater mutant from space, like it doesn't even belong in this world. It is so horrifyingly ugly, and definitely this is terrifying. And because of that, it is one of the scariest sea monsters of the world. Giant squid. Giant squids are the things of nightmares. These massive deep water ocean beasts are some of the most frightening animals alive today. With their blood-red skin, their 2 powerful tentacles and 8 arms, and their massive eyeballs, these are not something you want to meet on your next excursion to the beach. Much like their close relative, the colossal squid, the giant squid has the largest eyeballs out of any animal on Earth. Their eyes are approximately 10 inches, 27 centimeters in diameter. To put that in comparison, a common adult face is about 8 to 9 inches, 20 to 23 centimeters in diameter. Imagine an eyeball the size of your face staring at you from the dark murk of the sea. According to National Geographic, giant squid need their eyeballs to be so big because they use them to detect objects in the dark depths where most animals would not be able to see a thing. While the general makeup of a giant squid is scary enough, the fact that they can grow to be over 59 feet, 18 meters, is the really terrifying part. 59 feet, 18 meters, is longer than most boats. Also, they are so strong that they have had many fights against sharks and big whales. Even though they base their diet on fish, small whales, shrimps, and other squids, these enigmatic predators could easily wrap you in one of their tentacles and slurp you into its gross squid mouth. If that doesn't inspire nightmares, I don't know what does. These beasts are so elusive that the first image ever taken of one was in 2004 when Japanese researchers found a living giant squid in the ocean. Moray eel. Moray eels are far from cuddly. These terrifying fish live inside the cracks and crevices of reefs, preying on anything they can get their sharp teeth onto. These monstrous ocean fish will feast on anything from octopus to other fish, and they are not afraid to bite you if you impose upon their territory. Some people may think moray eels are interesting, but there is no denying their nightmarish qualities. Just look into the mouth of a moray eel. You will find a cavern of pointed fangs that they use to bite, and 2 powerful jaws that they use to take the prey into their mouths and chew them. These things look like a terrible mix between a venomous snake and the world's ugliest tadpole. Not only do moray eels look scary, but they kinda look mean. There's an almost savage look in the eyes of a moray eel. No matter how colorful or pretty they may appear swishing their snaky bodies through the ocean, I promise they are evil. Moray eels even swim with their mouths completely open, as that is how they breathe, passing water through their mouth and past their gills. This is problematic for unsuspecting squid or cuttlefish, as the moray eel can lunge and bite in a split second. I mean, come on. Their mouths are literally open all of the time. It's like walking around with your fists up looking for a fight. Great white shark. Great white sharks are really the terrors of the ocean. No other sea creature inspired quite so much dread as the massive great white shark. They don't even look like they belong on this planet. With their pointy fins and their white bellies, their black, soulless eyes, excellent smell sense, and their rows of incredibly 300+ sharp teeth, they make your skin crawl just thinking about them. There's no animal on Earth more synonymous with fear in the ocean than the great white shark. And why would there be? These things grow to be almost the size of a bus, 15 to 20 feet, 4 to 6 meters, weighing up to 5,000 pounds, 2,267 kilograms. Interestingly enough, even though great white sharks look like horrifying monsters, they are not actually mindless killing machines. There are around 100 shark attacks every year worldwide, but only between a third and half are from great white sharks. Plus, most are not even fatal. According to National Geographic, scientists believe great white sharks are not even trying to kill humans. When they attack, they are merely sampling by biting a little bit. The sharks only nibble on humans and then release them, realizing that they aren't the best food. They prefer some seals, sea lions, turtles, or little whales. Apparently, we are not even a food item on the menu of the great white shark. Have you ever swam near a shark? How was the experience? Let me know in the comments below, and if you are new here, be sure to subscribe. Giant Pacific Octopus. It is hard to decide which sea monster is more terrifying, the giant Pacific octopus or the giant squid. While the squid is way larger and has an eyeball the size of my head, there is something supernaturally unnerving about watching the giant Pacific octopus wriggle its way through the ocean. Its fat red head, 8 boneless arms, hundreds of gross suction cups, and oddly feline eyes all combine to make the giant Pacific octopus an underwater freak of a monster. Maybe the thing that makes an octopus so terrifying is the fact that it can easily enfold you in its 8 squishy arms and then slurp you with its suction cups. The common Pacific octopus size is from 10 to 16 feet, that's 3 to 5 meters, and it can weigh from 22 to 110 pounds, that's 10 to 50 kilograms. But a group of researchers reported the largest individual recorded weight of 600 pounds, 272 kilograms, and measured 30 feet, 9 meters across in length. Just thinking about it makes me nauseous. Imagine a 30-foot mass of gelatin that weighs 600 pounds wrapping its underwater spider legs around you, because that is basically what an octopus is, an underwater spider without bones, like a melted tarantula. That being said, the giant Pacific octopus is pretty cool considering it can change color and texture to blend in with its surroundings. This is one of the only animals that has incredible natural camouflage, which makes him another of the scariest monsters living in the sea. Viperfish. This sea monster is not very large. In fact, the viperfish only grows to be about 1 foot, 12 inches in length. But it is an absolute terror. Just the teeth alone on the viperfish are enough to make me squeal and swim in the other direction. Their teeth are unusually large that they don't entirely fit into their mouths, and they are able to impale fish just by moving their heads. Their teeth are curved and remind me a lot of the fangs on a pit viper. These creatures have undoubtedly the most foul-looking mouths you have ever seen on a fish. Their jaws are massive, and interestingly enough, their stomachs are equally oversized so they can stockpile food in their bellies, and their bodies can modify to receive huge prey, and go for days without eating. The good news is that these underwater vipers live roughly 5,000 feet, 1,524 meters, 1.5 kilometers, below the surface of the ocean. However, stay aware. At night, they have been known to travel up into shallow waters to search for food. The last thing you want when skinny dipping at the beach is to meet a hungry viperfish. One of its fangs could easily stick all the way through your hand, so be careful with the nights at the beach. Frilled shark. What is it about sharks that is so inherently terrifying? The great white shark is scary for its size and its raw animal power, but this shark, the frilled shark, is a whole different sea monster of its own. This shark is a monstrosity, and these are the last of an ancient family of sharks which date all the way back to the Jurassic period. Whereas a great white will charge at its prey and clamp down its teeth, the frilled shark floats silently and eerily in the water, then it coils its body like a spring or a snake and lashes out suddenly to surprise a poor and unfortunate fish. Frilled sharks have roughly 300 barbed fangs inside of their mouths. These things are nasty. Their teeth face inward like hooks, so once this beastly sea monster gets its mouth on you, there is no getting away. Scientists think the frilled shark uses its teeth to lure fish directly into its mouth, because its body is nearly invisible in the water, but its teeth are bright white. Fish and squid are easily lured directly into its hungry jaws, and by the time they've realized their error, it is too late for them to make an escape. Blue whale. Though not a terrifying sea monster, the blue whale is definitely the closest living animal that fits the description of a true sea monster. It is simply massive and owns the title of the biggest animal on the planet. Not only the biggest animal in the sea, but the biggest animal on the entire planet. Blue whales can weigh as much as 200 tons. That is roughly the same weight of 33 elephants. Also, its stomach can hold 1 ton of krill, and this giant animal needs to eat about 4 tons of krill each day. According to the WWF, a blue whale's heart is the same size as a Volkswagen Beetle. Even if you already knew how huge these beasts are, what you might not know is that blue whales are also the loudest creatures in the world. Their call is louder than the output of a jet engine, reaching an astounding 188 decibels. For comparison, a jet engine only reaches 140 decibels. When you think about sea monsters like an ancient underwater dinosaur that was hundreds of feet long and weighed hundreds of tons, the closest living specimen is definitely the blue whale. There is no denying the boggling size of this modern-day sea monster. Thanks for watching. Which of these sea monsters do you find the most terrifying? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and click the notifications bell. See you next time.